Hey everybody, welcome to Bookish, the last show actually of our spring season. We're the virtual program on authors, thinkers, and the literary life, brought to you by the Southern California News Group and the Bay Area News Group. I'm Sam Dunn. I'm the special projects editor at SCNG. I'm a book nerd and an author myself. I want to say thank you to our Reader Rewards subscribers and all of you who've made our virtual program so popular. By the way, if you are a Reader Rewards subscriber tonight, you're automatically entered to win a $50 Barnes & Noble gift card, which is going to come in really handy because by the end of the show, you're going to have a lot of great book recommendations. Before we get started, here are a few things to know. All attendees are muted to allow for the free flow of conversation among the panelists, but if you have questions, and we hope you do, please add them in the Q&A section of the Zoom toolbar at the bottom of your screen. And also, if you just want to enter the conversation, join the chat also at the bottom of your screen. This session will be videotaped and a link will be sent to you, so you can share or just revisit some of your favorite moments, and we hope you do that too. It's also posted at scng.com/virtual events, where you can find all of our past virtual events and see what's coming up. Now it is my pleasure to introduce our Bookish host, the writer, performer, radio commentator extraordinaire. Her work is heard on NPR's Morning Edition and This American Life. She's a contributing editor at The Atlantic and a syndicated and the host of the syndicated Radio Minute, the lowdown on science. She's the author of many books, the most recent being The Mad Woman and the Roomba. Beaming to us from beautiful Pasadena, our favorite mad woman and my friend, Sandra Singlo. Hello, Sandra.
Hello. How do you like my new haircut, my That Girl hair?
I love it.
It is my first haircut in a year, and so I'm very excited because this show is so big. It's the finale of our spring season. We have Erika Schickel with her big new memoir, The Big Hurt. We have Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me, the NPR show's host Peter Sagal joining us. We have Marlo Thomas, That Girl, and more. And yeah, oh my God, so classic, so iconic. And ending the hour, we have humorist Henry Alford coming back with his latest New Yorker piece called Insomnia, the opera. Are you ready? Performed tonight for the first time only by the Bookish Players, a star-studded cast with Marilu Henner, John Michael Higgins, right?
Best in Show.
Best in Show, kimono guy. He's here.
Got
Even a cameo by MTV's Randy of the Redwoods. Remember him? It's such a big show. We have to start now. And we're all going to be done in under an hour. So it's a race.
Bye.
You got to go away. Okay.
Bye.
We'll see you at the end. Okay. Hello. Okay. Welcome, everyone. Let's go to our first guest, Erika Schickel. And here's the 30-second download. Erika Schickel is the author of You're Not the Boss of Me, Adventures of a Modern Mom. Her essays, book reviews, and reporting have appeared in the LA Times, LA Weekly, Salon, Tin House, Bust Magazine, and the LA Review of Books, amongst others. Theatrically trained, Erika has worked in film and TV for 30 years, both on camera and off as a voiceover artist. She's also written and performed both theatrical and solo work for the LA Theater Works series, The Play's the Thing. Particularly notable solo show, favorite of mine, Wild America. Get it? Erika, Wild America, directed by Jo Beth Williams. Erika's memoir, The Big Hurt, is coming out to you in August from Hachette. Pre-order now. Welcome, Erika Schickel.
Hello. Hi.
Hello. It's good to see you. I know we're early in your book tour, the first, certainly not the last. So your book, The Big Hurt, compulsively readable, deep, beautiful, amazing, is a very big book. So I'm going to give a bit of the log line, and then you will respond a little bit. So the description is a memoir of growing up in a fractured literary family. Your father was the legendary film critic, Richard Schickel. Of being seduced by a teacher and kicked out of boarding school, which landed you in 2016 on the cover of the Boston Globe, and then doing it all over again in middle age when you broke up your marriage over an affair with the name that cannot be spoken, but happens to be LA's most famous noir writer. And our bright audience can probably Google it in 5 minutes, but the name is not important, your journey is. So if you can unpack it a little bit and take us back to the 1970s, your childhood growing up in a literary family. What was that like?
Oh, well, it was very privileged, of course. Manhattan, 1970s, two parents, both professional writers. Yes, my father was the film critic. My mother was a novelist and journalist. And it was the 70s. I was a Jodie Foster lookalike, unsupervised in Manhattan. It was a strange and predatory time. And a lot of the book deals with that.
Yeah, and I think, right, you were on page 6, rumored to be Woody Allen's schoolhood, like Schoolgirls, which never happened. Louis Malla's casting Pretty Baby, and it just reading it. And I say these things, and but the book is so beautiful, but it is also really a slice of time. If you were really in the middle of it and not really knowing that. And
not, of course not. It all seemed perfectly normal to me. And, you know, why wouldn't middle-aged men be asking me out on dates when I'm 15, you know? Yes, Louis Malle's casting director came to Dalton, where I was in the, what was I, in the 4th grade or 5th grade? Looking to cast the young prostitute and wanted to have me come in for an audition, which I begged my mother to let me do, and she actually refused, much to her credit. And Brooke Shields got the part.
so now you go, and I think I remember the 70s growing up in Malibu, there was the same kind of wild children running around, parents sort of, like, be free, do whatever you want, but we really kind of wanted some structure. Now you go off to boarding school, you know, free to be whoever you want to be in this bucolic boarding school of Buxton. So what happened there?
Well, I mean, you know, the setup for all of that is that because of my parents' toxic divorce, and I was starting to act out and do a little shoplifting and a little too young for it sex and what have you. And they finally sent me off to London for the summer to be an au pair when I was 14 for 2 children under the age of 3. And then I did a little shoplifting in London and got caught and sent back to the States. And that's when my parents said, this is it, we're sending you to boarding school. We can't do this anymore. And I got sent to this little tiny progressive bohemian hippie boarding school in the Berkshires. And it was a 180-degree change from everything I had ever known.
And you loved it. It was very creative and free. I mean, at that time, and we've seen the legacy in the Me Too movement decades after, where if a teacher and student dated, it was kind of fine. It was accepted.
Well, yeah, I mean, and that's sort of an odd moment in the story where this affair happened 6 weeks before graduation. Just to set it up, I was an A student and a sort of a pillar of the community when I was seduced by this music teacher. And I, for some reason, thought it wouldn't be a problem, you know, because the school had so tacitly condoned teacher-student liaisons the whole 4 years I'd been there. And then when they found out, of course, he was married, and yeah, I was actually rather surprised that they were going to kick me out because I thought it was fine.
Yeah, and we see that that legacy later. But in your life, now you moved to Los Angeles, and we actually originally met as like PTA moms, which is the most outrageous thing about this. I met you in your other mode of a volunteer, a mom, and you were still thinking of writing, but of course with children, still trying to figure it out. And of course, and you're still writing and doing this into your life steps. Sam Spade.
Sam Spade. I call him Sam Spade because what's the point of trying to make up a name for him? And in fact, Sandra, you and I met on the memoir circuit because my first book in 2007 was called You're Not the Boss of Me, Adventures of a Modern Mom. And I'd been writing sort of funny, pithy little parenting essays. And then that published, and after that published, it was time to write the second book. And I thought I would write a hilarious, zany book about my bohemian boarding school days. And the big hilarious payoff would be, I got kicked out of boarding school for sleeping with a teacher, ha ha. And the minute I began to really examine that time for the first time in my adult life, after living with like years of shame around having been kicked out for having this affair. I mean, it was, and then having my heart broken. So I was pretty traumatized without knowing it. So I started trying to write my funny memoir about this stuff. And I became flooded with sadness. And I just sort of succumbed to this sort of existential crisis about surrounding my parents, my mother, deeply about my mother, what had happened to me at Buxton. And mind you, at this point, I had 2 children who were nearing the age I had been when I had been sent away to school. So I was re-experiencing my childhood by raising children and coming to understand what the horror of sort of what had happened. I'd been thrown away by every single adult that was responsible for me.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes it such an incredible book. And the time is too short to touch on everything about it. I must say, reading it, it's a big book. It's dark, but it's also hilarious and it's huge. And I think what's amazing about it is that you come out the victor. It's a book about love, about the healing power of love, and you come out like a hero or heroine, and for your kids also.
Let me just say too, I mean, to say it's about love, well, of course, anything of worth is about love in the end. But I mean, more topically, it's kind of about repetition compulsion. So that the affair that I enacted in middle age was almost an exact reenactment of what I had gone through my senior year in high school, in which I slept with an older, inappropriate, pedagogic male and blew up my personal world, was exiled from my community, my family, my profession, and I went into a long exile over it. So it was sort of, it was like I couldn't not engage this affair. It was like I had to re-experience it in order to understand it. And that's why I have the 2 stories in the book.
It's an amazing read. Rebecca Constantino gives a shout out. Can't wait to read it from the chat. Erika Schickel, thanks so much. It's fantastic. It's going to make a big splash. Erika's new memoir is The Big Hurt, coming out from Hachette in August. So pre-order now and avoid the rush. Okay, thank you so much.
Thanks so much.
Next up, Peter Sagal. The 30-second download. Peter Sagal has been a playwright, screenwriter, author, journalist, columnist, marathoner, Jeopardy contestant, dramaturg, podcast host, documentary host, foreign correspondent, wedding officiant, and magician's assistant. As a playwright, his work has been produced or commissioned by the Long Wharf Theater, Seattle Rep, Actors Theater of Louisville, and more. His screenwriting career pretty much ended with Dirty Dancing 2, Havana Nights, which you wrote without meaning to. I'll have to probe that. I'm not sure I understand that, or I believe, we'll see. He has hosted the NPR show, Wait, Don't Tell Me, as you all know, for over 20 years, growing it from 50,000 weekly listeners to over 5 million listeners in over 700 stations. It is the most listened to hour in public radio. Stephen Colbert has called him the funniest person on radio, also allowing that Stephen says he's on TV. He's the author of the Book of Vice, Naughty Things, and How to Do Them, and the incomplete book of Running that we're going to be talking about today. He has 3 daughters, Rosie, Gracie, and Willa, and also with wife Mara. Perhaps funniest of all, they have a new baby named Elliot. Welcome, Peter.
Hey, how are you, Sandra? Nice to see you.
Good. You look really well rested for a new baby.
Well, that's because this is a digital thing that actually presents someone who looks like halfway decent. If I were to turn off the filter, it would be truly horrendous. So God bless technology. It's the latest thing for me.
That's no, so Mara, as you pointed out, is a stage manager, which is like the ideal thing. Yeah, she's taping off where you cannot go.
My wife Mara is an equity stage manager, and anybody out there who has worked in equity theaters knows what they're like. So she has basically stage managed this baby to within an inch of its life. Everything we have like spiked the floor and the nursery, we have schedules, we have notes. It's remarkable.
Yes, and excuse me, Mara. Yeah, and all the cues are made from baby Elliot. So
Exactly.
congrats on
he
that.
did not miss his cue, 30 minutes till bedtime. Thank you, 30. We are on it.
So to your book, The Incomplete Book of Running, which is, it's so hilarious and it's so thoughtful and then it's surprisingly moving. It's all these different things. I mean, if you can take, for those who don't remember, Jim Fixx's Complete Book of Running, of which the cover.
I brought a prop for this. I've never done this before. So that's reversed. Sorry about that. But that is, this is a book that if you are of a certain age, and I am, was a huge phenomenon back in the 70s. It actually came out in the late 70s. But when people talk about like the 70s runners boom, when all of a sudden everybody was buying running shorts and headbands and running all the time, it was more or less caused by this book. Which was written, it was written by a kind of a convert. Jim Fixx, as he would have told you, was this overweight, smoking New York editor, and he started running and he lost all this weight and it changed his life and he published this book. And one of the reasons I brought this book to show everybody on this little video is those are the author's legs, those amazingly, Michelangelo David-like ideal version of human legs. And I was a kid growing up in suburban New Jersey and was not athletic in any way. And my father, who was part of that running boom, had a copy. And so I used to pull it down and look at it. And it was for somebody who, let's say, dreamed of being more physically fit and perhaps even appealing than I was, a kind of porn. I mean, you pull it down and you look at those legs and imagine, I look at my own little doughy legs, and then I would read about how running made everything better. You'd live longer, you'd be more attractive, you could eat more, which I was into.
You know what, but Peter, your legs look really good, I have to say, and I can say this over Zoom, and I don't think it's not sexual harassment or anything like that.
I still have them. No one knows. No one has seen my legs for the last year. So I'm making this into a long story, but basically, I actually, perhaps inspired by that book as much as anybody was back then, started running and started an on and off career as a unlikely runner. And then when I turned 40, I got much to my surprise, very serious about it. I ran my first marathon sort of as a midlife crisis, but discovered I either liked it or disliked it in an interesting way, and pretty much devoted myself to it. Became a columnist for Runner's World. I've run 16 marathons. I don't know how many other races. Became a central part of my life, which is not something I ever would have expected, that someone of my nature would ever be an amateur athlete of some renown. And I ended up writing my own book. And this was the fun part. Damn it, I put my own legs on the cover.
They actually look good.
As you can tell, also reversed, is a graphic and extremely affectionate tribute to Mr. Fixx's book. In fact, I was pleased to know that when I first wrote about the effect of Jim Fixx's book on me, his son wrote to me in much appreciation and sent me a copy of the original print. Jim Fixx, by the way, I should say, died of a massive heart attack while running when he was 4 years younger than I am now. So I guess, one up on you, Mr. Fixx.
Well, but if you can go back to that for a moment, of that you both liked and disliked the marathoning, if you can break it down for people who will all be buying your book regardless, but
absolutely
break down what that is.
I think that, how best to put it? Let me assume for the moment that people who are watching a literary conversation on a Friday night, even under current circumstances, and are particularly interested in listening to me, a public radio host, we're not much like me, particularly athletically inclined, perhaps. It's an assumption. My apologies to the exceptions out there. And what I discovered, among many other things, is the pleasures of athleticism for the non-athletic. There are many. There's the absolute physical benefits of exercise. You've heard about them. They're true. There are the mental benefits. You've heard about them. They're also true. But there is the peculiar fascination of something that's difficult, and the particular fascination of something that you don't expect to be good at, which is something I recommend everybody. Everybody should go out and try something that they have no expectations that they will ever succeed at, or that they have no natural talent for, because what you find is you put a lot less pressure on yourself, and you are in a position to learn, to grow, to improve. And here's the other thing. I would call myself a bookish person, as I have been referencing. I had an expensive education. I have lots of books. I actually have read some of them. So I consider myself a very smart person. About 10 years ago, your introduction referenced that I was married once and now I am again in very different circumstances. And the transition from that first marriage to the second was, shall we say, not easy. It was very, 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 very difficult. And when I was in that situation, and this may be the genesis of the book, when I was in that situation, I found myself, my smart self with my expensive education and my many books, many of which I've read, at an utter loss. I didn't know what to do. All my smarts, all my learning, all my veneer of cleverness was useless. And I found myself somewhat adrift. And what I discovered as I went through that somewhat traumatic experience, very traumatic experience, was that what really had helped me was actually this strange hobby of mine, this running very long distances at a moderate to sometimes rapid pace. I found that physical difficulty, triumphing over physical difficulty, doing something maddeningly as simple and difficult as running 26 miles at once, was actually what had actually prepared me for this trauma that I was going through. It turns out that marathons are a lot like life in that they're very difficult and they often seem like it will not end or not end well. And it doesn't sometimes seems like you cannot take another step. But having run a bunch of marathons, it turns out that when I went through a real life experience that was a lot like that, I had some reserves and experience to draw on.
Well, that is so perfectly said. I had many questions. You just laid out all the answers to them there. I should also point out, we do have an audience. We're going to take one audience question that you have to read. You have to get Peter's book to read about his experience with the Boston Marathon in 2014. I'm not going to give it, but it is
I was
so.
2014 as well, but the interesting thing about it was that it was 2013.
Exactly. So yes, on Zoom, everything changes a little bit by a year.
Yeah, I know.
So,
what's weird is it's like a year didn't happen, so all of our calendars are messed up. How many times have we said, oh, last year? I know it wasn't last year. Last year, nothing happened. The thing that was interesting that happened 2 years ago. You just forgot.
Listen, you're the news quiz host. I had to make you feel smart by, having you correct me on something. Oh, so if you don't mind, last question. Jim Weaver wants to know who your favorite interviewee has been on Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me. So you can make everyone else mad.
I get that. I get that question a lot, so much so that I should come up with a really great answer. I will tell you that for this week's show, I got to talk to Andre DeShields, Broadway star, and he was pretty great. I will say this, that one of the amazing pleasures of my life has been I've been able to talk to people who I admired when I was a much younger person. And I've been doing this long enough so that we overlap. So I was able to talk to, for example, Dick Van Dyke and Carol Burnett. And it is a wonderful, wonderful thing to find out that the people you invested so much emotion and affection in when you were a young, impressionable person ended up being absolutely worth that. I mean, I remember what?
Oh my God, so no, I was just saying that's a perfect segue to our next guest, but please complete your thought. I'm sorry.
I mean, and that, like, I'll finish with this, is like, I was a huge Star Trek fan growing up. And Leonard Nimoy came and was on our show, was there in person. And he was such the nicest guy. He was a nice Jewish grandfather who was so grateful for all the affection that generations of nerds had for him, that it was a very pleasant evening. And I didn't feel as if all that time trying to learn Klingon as a youth was wasted.
That's perfect. And on that note, thank you so much, Peter Sagel, host of Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me. His newest memoir, it's fantastic, is The Incomplete Book of Running. Thank you so much. Go back to your baby or just relax.
I'll see if I can answer some of the questions in the chat before I go. But meanwhile,
perfect.
Long and
that would be great.
Thank you, Sandra.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And now the great Marlo Thomas. Speaking of icons we would like to meet, and you won't be disappointed, the 30-second download. So as you remember, Marlo burst onto the scene as television's That Girl, running on ABC from 1966 to 71. She has produced seven best-selling books, including the legendary Free to Be You and Me, Free to Be a Family, The Right Words in the Right Time, volumes 1 and 2, Thanks and Giving All Year Long, her memoir, Growing Up Laughing, and It Ain't Over Till It's Over. Her so many awards, 4 Emmys, a Golden Globe, a Grammy. President Barack Obama awarded Marlo the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 2014. She's the National Outreach Director for St. Jude's Research Hospital, founded by her father, Danny Thomas, a cause for which she has helped raise over $1 billion. Her newest book, which is coming out in paperback just next month, so get it, is What Makes a Marriage Last? 40 celebrated couples share with us the secrets to a happy life, co-authored with her husband of 40 plus years, Phil Donahue. And if you don't know who Phil Donahue is, come on. Okay, please, it's coming out in paperback. So welcome all the way from Manhattan, Marlo Thomas.
Hello, hello. Hi.
Oh
So happy to be here.
Oh, we're so happy to have you. I mean, you're so, we're just thrilled. So
Thank you.
what I'd like to do is, I mean, it's so interesting, and we've had this show on for over a year, and your name comes up constantly, still, you know, because you are America's sweetheart and also a feminist icon. We had Leslie Lair, who wrote a memoir, A Boob Story, and was quoting you about going braless. God created women to bounce, so be it. So if you could, I think everybody knows that girl, but I think they don't all that you conceived and produced it. So I wonder if you could take us back to your thinking in that time about creating the character of Anne Marie, the aspiring actress from Brewster, New York.
Well, you know, I had done another pilot for ABC called Two's Company, and it didn't sell. But the network thought that I could be a television star. So they called me in and they gave me some scripts to read. And I said to them, you know, everybody on these scripts, the girl is either the daughter of somebody or the wife of somebody or the secretary of somebody. Did you ever think of doing a show where the girl is the somebody? And they looked at me like I was speaking in Swahili and said, would anybody watch a show like that? So I have brought with me some ammunition. I brought The Feminine Mystique by Betty Friedan. And I said, read this. This is where it's going. Girls today do not want to follow their mothers into the kitchen. They have a whole other idea of what they want to do with their lives. They want to follow their own dreams. So why don't we do a show like a girl like me that graduated from college, who moved to the big city to be an actress, whose father wanted her to get married and have children, do that story. And so they said, I don't know, would anybody watch a show like that? And there it was, we did it. They bet on me. I remember Edgar Sherrick, who was the head of programming at ABC at the time, said, okay, he said, I'm going to bet on you. And I said, you're betting on all the girls in America. You don't understand. And that first night we went on the air, we were a very big hit. And it really was because the men in the suits did not realize that this was not really a revolutionary figure. I mean, she was a fait accompli. Every home in America had a little girl who wanted to be something. And now they see this girl running around and, you know, being ambitious and being challenging the system that became a role model for them. And I'm so glad that she did. It was a very, very exciting to be the first girl on television that was a single working girl.
And I think that's such a great setup for what makes a marriage last, because you weren't necessarily the #1 candidate to get married and settle down. And I think in 1972, your TV special, Free to Be You and Me, is on. A certain Phil Donahue is watching it, and he has you on his show. So that is you and Phil, it's the ideal story of meet cute. Can you just say how you guys met?
Well, I went on his show. He had not been in LA at the time, so I hadn't seen his show. So I didn't know him or what he looked like or anything. He was like, you know, the star of the Midwest and everywhere. Anyway, so my press agent was with me. We were traveling around the country promoting a movie. And she said to me, you're going to go on the Donahue show. It's 9 o'clock in the morning and it's you for an hour. I said, I'm not that interesting for an hour. And at 9 a.m., I'm really not that interesting. She said, you have to go on this show. This guy is the hottest thing. So I said, okay. So I went into the dressing room, the green room, waiting, having little celery sticks or whatever. And in walks this guy with this white hair and those killer blue eyes. And I swear to you, it was like a shampoo commercial. Everything got kind of fuzzy. And I thought, wow. And then he later told me that in Catholic boys' vernacular, I was an impure thought. And he wasn't such a pure thought himself. So anyway, and that was it. We started dating right away. He took me out to dinner 2 nights later, and that was it. Yeah.
And so you get married for the first time at 42, and then
Right.
he has the 4 boys in Winnetka, Illinois. I mean, talk about jumping into it. And I think that is just one of the many fantastic stories in what makes a marriage last, which I just want to keep on because it's so delicious. The photos are unbelievable.
Aren't they?
Even of
I
Jimmy
know.
Carter in that white suit, people have to get it for the photos alone.
I know. But what was great is that we weren't the only couple that met and knew right away. Billy Crystal and Janice, they knew right away. And a lot of people it just clicked right away. And that doesn't always last, but these marriages lasted. What we felt was that a lot of people have asked us, what do you think is the theme or the kind of the one thing that stands out as what all of these couples did that made their marriage last? And aside from love, of course, and lust and trust, those are very big things. But what we noticed is that each person in the marriage really wanted it to work. In other words, sometimes you'll see a relationship where one person is doing all the tending to the relationship and the other person, male or female, is just kind of along for the ride. And the other person is running as fast as they can. In these marriages that last a long time, they're both very invested in it working and doing their part and figuring out, what part of the problem do they own and really talking it through. And it was very helpful to me and Phil. I mean, we walked away from it with a lot of the couples saying to each other, we ought to do that. We ought to do that. Or sometimes we'd say, let's never do that, right? But,
if we could delve into that a little bit, because I think, as you said, there's no plan B there's so many things that come up in this book. It really makes you read it and really think about your own relationship. And I think Kevin Bacon said, keep the arguments clean and the sex dirty.
Right, right. Great.
So, and you have so many, the people it's like you have Jimmy Carter, Rosalind Carter, Viola Davis and Julius Tennant, Elton John and David Furnish, Neil Patrick Harris and David Burke, Lily Tomlin and Jane Wagner, Al Roker and Deborah Roberts, Deepak and Rita Chopra, John and Justine Leguizamo. You have such diversity of people.
Talking to Ted Danson and his wife, Mary Steenburgen,
right.
This is his 3rd marriage, and they've been married over 30 years. And I said to him, how did you ever have the guts? I mean, I never wanted to be married. I didn't get married till I was 42. I said, how did you ever have the guts to get married a 3rd time? And he said, well, first I had to get over lying. And I found that so interesting that he said that. And I said, what were you lying about? He said, well, I was unfaithful, that was for sure. He said, but I lied about who I was. I didn't ever tell my pain or say where I was vulnerable. He said, I could have the most horrible day in the world. I'd been rejected, I'd been hurt, I had failed, whatever. And I'd walk through that door with the woman that I was with, and I was just Mr. Great. Never admitted that I had a bad day. So I was living a lie all my life because that was my image of what a man was. A man is a guy who's got it all together. He said, and so the people that I was with never really knew who I was until I met Mary. And Mary, she didn't play that game. She would needle in and ask me, well, what really happened today? So she, wouldn't let me get away with it. And that's how that relationship really made it. And it's one of the things that makes a marriage work is that you really do tell who you are. You really reveal who you are with all the warts and everything, and then that gives the person that you're with the chance to be vulnerable as well. And then you really get to know each other. You know, Chris Rock said a funny thing. I didn't interview him because he's divorced. But he said in one of his comedy specials, he said, when you go out on a date, it's not really you that's going. You're sending your representative, right? This person who just says how great you are and tells all these fabulous stories about you. I mean, the real you is not anywhere near the area.
Right. And okay, and I just want to give a shout. Kathleen Brady wants you to know that you are very much loved at Immaculate Heart High School.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank
So
you.
that's really
I went
so,
to Marymount actually, but Immaculate Heart, we used to play them in volleyball. It's a
well,
good
they
school.
they
Yeah.
love you regardless. So just touching on a couple quick points, because I know it's later in New York, so we will let you go on time. I think quickly, the best advice about fights, and I want to know what you and Phil do. There's this whole thing about don't go to bed angry, although, you know, Ben Falcone of Melissa McCarthy's husband said, go to bed angry, you may have had some wine, you'll wake
It'll
up.
be
you won't
gone in the
remember.
morning. Yeah, it'll be gone in the morning. A lot of people said that. Michael J. Fox said, don't pick at it. You know, people pick at scabs. It's not necessary. James Carville gave us the best advice about that. He said, you know, when you're in one of those arguments that are circular, you know, where you say, well, you said you do it. No, you said you would. No, but you didn't put the thing in. Well, yes, you did. And it goes around and around a circle. At some point, just say, let's kick this can down the road. He said a really good marriage has a whole line of cans in this alley that have been kicked down the road. And you know, when we came off the road after interviewing him, we were in the middle of one of those circular arguments, and Phil said to me, oh, let's kick that can down the road. And we both started laughing. And it's become a thing for us now. We actually use that as, you know, this is a stupid fight. We waste so much time, all of us, in arguments that you can't even remember what they were a week ago. They were so stupid. But you get into that thing where somebody has to be right. And I love what Patty Smythe, John McEnroe's wife, said. She says, you want to be right or do you want to be happy? She says, that's the choice you have to make. So give it up. So you're not right. Who cares? Be happy. And I think that's a wonderful way of looking at it. And that's now changed me. I think of that often when I'm just about to go after Phil about something to say that I knew it all along, and then I just don't. And I thought, see, it's better already. I didn't say it, and we're better for that.
I wonder if you could just tell one, and people should read it. The whole thing about toothpaste caps on and off is a theme in the book about, and I know that you're always organizing Phil's office so
Right.
that he can't find anything, and he
Right.
thinks you pack too many things, and that's
Right.
I think because they're celebrity couples also, the thing of jealousy comes up of how people handle that. And
Right.
I laughed so much of the story when you did that movie with Chris Christopherson.
Oh, I know, right.
Can you tell it? And the lost honor of Catherine Beck in
Right.
1984. Can you
Right.
just say what happened with that?
Well, I was staying in an apartment downtown. The kids and Phil were in Winnetka, and I had to be up at like 4 a.m. So the company, his TV company, had an apartment downtown for him. So when it snowed, so I stayed in the apartment for a couple of nights because I had to get up so early, and Winnetka's a long drive. Anyway, so it's about, I don't know, 4 o'clock in the morning. I have to be up in like a half hour, and there's a big banging on my door. And I think, oh my God, who could be coming to my room at 4 o'clock in the morning? So I opened the door, and there's Phil. And he said, oh, honey, I just missed you. And I thought, oh, you're such full of BS. I looked at him, I said, come in, do your search through the apartment. I mean, he had it in his head that Chris Christopherson was there. I mean, it's so ridiculous, you know, and then he, you know, then we talked about it, he laughed about it and everything, because I was furious because now I wasn't getting another hour's sleep. But he talks about the fact that when people have jealousy, it's really in them. It's not anything you did.
Right.
And they have to get rid of that. And Phil said, he, you know, I mean, we've been married 40 years, but he said about after 20 years of marriage, he finally realized that he trusted me and he could get rid of that. He said, because it was really a burden. It really hurt to carry it around. The other
Yes.
thing that I thought was wonderful that somebody said, Judith Vior said, no matter how hard you try, he is never going to be you, and you are never going to be him. So really what you have to do to make a marriage successful is accommodate those differences. And Phil and I are very different. I'm a very impulsive person. If something is happening and we need a solution, I'm going to go for the phone right now and call somebody and get whatever we need. Phil, on the other hand, he wants to sit back, he wants to think it over, and maybe sometime tomorrow, he'll come to a decision. And so that's been a battle for us, where I say, come on, let's do this. And he'll say, no, just wait a minute. But when we worked on the book, there were so many incidents in a row of all these people that we interviewed that we started to learn that, sometimes it's better to wait and sometimes it is better to move forward. So we started to be able to talk about that because we had so many experiences. The book is now a podcast, and it is so much fun to do the podcast. It's on, you can find it on Apple or wherever you get your podcast. It's called Double Date, and it's the recording of these interviews. And it's so great to hear the back and forth and the laughter. And we've just really loved putting these podcasts together. They're just great.
So we'll put the link.
I hope you'll tune into them. Pardon me?
We'll put the link in the chat so that people can find it for sure. And so they can pair that up with getting your paperback, or hardback in I believe in 2 weeks.
It's great. Yeah. It's completely different. The book has more kind of filled out stories, but the podcast has the chatter and the camaraderie that and you get to hear those famous voices.
Oh, so fun. Okay. Well, thank you so much. We don't want to hold you over time because we know you're later than us and you're busy.
Yes. So thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun. And I'm so glad you like what makes a marriage last, and you'll love Double Date, and invite me again. I'd love to be on with you. It was a lot of fun.
Okay. And we're recording that, so we will have you back.
Thank you.
So, thank you so much. The great Marlo Thomas.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Double Date is the podcast.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. The new book is What Makes a Marriage Last, and it's out in paperback. And finally, we welcome to the virtual stage Henry Alford. Hello.
Hello.
Can we hear you?
Can you hear me?
Yes. Well, we're in for a treat. We started the Bookish Players a couple weeks ago with Annabelle Gurwitch and her book. And so now we've blown it into a big opera. So Henry, tell us, okay, in Insomnia, the opera you just wrote, what was the inspiration for writing that?
Perhaps the rings under my eyes are a clue. No, that I have a lot of trouble sleeping and have for years and years, but during the pandemic, it's been much worse. And it's not in the story, Enrico, our protagonist, he's someone who can't fall asleep. I can fall asleep. My problem in real life is that I'm getting up at 4 a.m. and then I'm up. And then, so it means I have a couple of good hours in the morning and then I go straight into baby animal videos.
Perfect. Okay. Yeah. Well, I think there's really nothing we can do to explain what's about to happen. The text you're about to see is Henry's piece, Insomnia, an opera. It is acted by 11 people, and you're going to see it now, the first ever.
Insomnia, the opera, by Henry Alford. Personaggi.
Enrico, an insomniac.
Enrico's suitors.
Valerian.
Melatonin.
Ambien.
And Clonopin.
ZZ Quill. Hi.
Pot gummy, man.
And me, the ghost of unfulfilled ambitions. Why is Mary Lou Henner here? I thought this was equity waiver.
Villagers.
And finally,
the blade of high-intensity specters.
Atto Primo, 10 p.m., a small bedchamber with a balcony that overlooks the village square. Enrico is putting on pajamas. He sings at half voice.
My raccoon eyes and zombie stare sing the woes of bodily miscare. Oh, $500 white noise machine. Oh, yoga dude named Tevin. Help me reverse 12 months of 24/7. Collective woe has ravished my breast. America, you put the in unrest.
Enrico parts his blackout curtains, opens the window, and addresses the villagers.
Hark, 20-something coder. Hark, seasoned whore. Tonight's the night I finally snore. When might turns to will and rises from seams. I've reduced my caffeine and I'm ready to dream.
He's reduced his caffeine and he's ready to dream.
Otto secundo. 1 a.m. Enrico, restless, has positioned his 5 sleep aid suitors on his bureau.
Oh, sleep aids, I beseech thee, which one of you has the power to short-term deep six me?
When cartoon characters are clobbered with a rolling pin, the sound it makes is clonopin.
No. Today's insomniacs want their remedies bespoke, and I can make everything seem like a private joke.
Sure, K-Pin and Gummy are sexy, but this herb's not having it. I won't make you carry Fisher scrabbling at her medicine cabinet.
I'm a hormone that's already in your body, right? Prithee, do you feel hormy tonight?
I won't unmoor you, and I'll reinstate your bounce. I'm safe and effective, though difficult to pronounce. So just call me Mary Lou Henner.
Mary Lou Henner. Ambien, all this talk of after effects has rendered you silent. Is reticence a mask for thine oft-told violence?
You reference sleepwalking like it's the Saw movies or Seven, but sleepwalking lets you lose weight while you sleep. In a word, heaven.
Enrico pops a pot gummy.
Hey, let's do this.
And crawls into bed. Otto terzo. 4 a.m. Enrico is awakened by a parade of specters, each of whom erupts in a brief paroxysm of screeching and recitative.
Hold on. That's not in my script. It's recitative. No. Okay, you know what? Let me just do this. Let me just do this my way. Sirens, car alarms, helicopters, barking dogs, thunder, fear of contagion, vaccine envy, Mitch McConnell's dewlap.
Festive neighbors.
Chicken sound from the basement.
Concerned that this is all leading to a Hannibal Lecter-ish sleep apnea mask. Irritation from having other people yell, "Unmute yourself," all day long like they're Uda Hagen.
Concerned that Vladimir Putin is downloading information from his memory foam?
Concerned that prestige television has overplayed its bourgeois white people get caught up in a world of crime card.
Anxiety that the term space heater is a huge mandate for such a teeny machine.
Discomfort with the word Terry.
Hi, my name is Mary Lou Henner. What's yours?
Mary Lou Henner.
Anxiety that if he doesn't vacuum his apartment daily, he'll drown in a drift of dead skin.
Sobbing, Enrico opens his window and prepares to leap. Right then, he hears the most terrifying specter of all, the ghost of unfulfilled ambitions.
You're squandering dead heats with the bears. Deadbeats, you degenerate grinder with your overfatted force meat. Through your numbness inviolate and your passivity tectonic, your recent business deal disappeared because you slept on it. Also, Tubby, you should have listened to Ambien. and paid a visit or two to the somnambulist gym.
Renewing his attempt to jump, Enrico looks down at the street, singing furiously. Just as he takes a deep breath and summons the will to leap, the window crashes down on his head. Enrico, like all characters in opera, when stabbed or shot, reacts by singing even more loudly, appearing to have no agency over his diaphragm. It is only when he attempts to jump a third time and the window crashes on his head again that Enrico, reeling, finally collapses into bed, unconscious at last.
Mary Lou Henner.
Fini.
Zoom theater, it's the new thing. I love your Buster Keaton at the end so much, Henry.
Bless you for doing that. What an honor.
Well, I think we'll all sleep very well tonight. I believe that's our show. Janet Fitch says hello. Yes, that's our show. Thank you, Henry. His new book, by the way, is And Then We Dance. That's the latest book. And it's the New Yorker. You can still get this piece online.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Henry, great to see you again. Where do we go from here, Sandra? I mean, that was literally operatic. I mean, so thank you, Peter and Marlo and Erika, and of course, Henry, not to mention the fabulous Bookish players. We're going to be back in June, so watch for our new dates. Also, I'd like you to invite you to check out our programs at scng.com/virtual events. That's where you're going to be able to find this show and all of our other recordings. And please, please support local journalism, read our newspapers, and visit our websites to stay informed, and equally important, to be entertained. If you'd like to share thoughts from today or have any questions, please email us at events@scng.com. That's events@scng.com. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Mwah. Have a great night.